Hello, I'm Brian Hyland. I am the Associate Curator of Medieval Manuscripts here at Museum of the Bible. Now what that means is that I get to work with manuscripts that cover almost 700 years of history, from about the time of Charlemagne all the way up to the time of Charles V. And then I bring these stories to you on The Bible Is So. Hello, I'm Brian Hyland, and today I'm in Gallery 7 of the history floor of Museum of the Bible. Today I'm going to talk about some of the events of the Protestant Reformation, which honestly is a case study in the law of unintended consequences. You see, the Reformation was the result of a complex series of things: theological, technological, political, social, economic, and personal factors that helped to take Luther's 95 Theses and turn it into a conflagration that started small as arguments among theologians, but then became major religious wars that consumed Europe during the 16th and 17th century. Now, was this what Luther intended? Of course not. When he wrote his letter, which included the 95 Theses, on October 31st, 1517, to Albrecht von Brandenburg.
Hallo.
Lovely name. He was the Archbishop of Mainz and Magdeburg. And when he sent it, he didn't mean it to be anything more than just a bunch of questions. But there was this pesky little invention called the printing press. And the printing press made it possible for these to be copied and disseminated all over Europe as people copied it, made copies of copies and copies of copies of copies. The printing press also played into the debates because theologians would print pamphlets attacking Luther, and Luther would respond in kind. And these things got printed over and over and over again. And so what happened was it just snowballed into this great big event. So as a consequence of writing the 95 Theses, Luther found himself 11 months later traveling from Wittenberg up here all the way down towards Augsburg. And what happened was that he spent the night in Nuremberg on October 4th, 1518, which is the feast of St. Francis of Assisi. When he reached Nuremberg, he found that yes, he had supporters there, but they were telling him, don't do it, don't go. Don't do what? He was on the way to meet with the Pope's representative, Cardinal Thomas Cajetan, who was visiting the Holy Roman Empire on behalf of Pope Leo X. People said, don't go and talk to him because it's a trap. If you go there, you will be declared a heretic. Luther, however, decided that he was going to stay fast. As a matter of fact, he wrote a letter that night, which we have right here. And in it, he says right there that verum persto fixus. Nevertheless, I stand here firmly fixed. Now, this is kind of an echo of something that he allegedly said in 1521 at the Diet of Worms.
Ew.
What? No, that's disgusting. No, worms, no, not a way of losing weight. The Diet is actually an imperial congress of representatives from all the states of the Holy Roman Empire. So as a consequence of being in Nuremberg, Luther discovered that the people there had not yet begun to Wittenbergize. Yeah, totally made that word up. Wittenbescere, right here. And what it means is to question church authority the way Luther was doing it. People were not Wittenbergizing. Instead, they were following the teachings of Johannes Eck, who had written a pamphlet that was very critical of Martin Luther. So at the beginning of the second paragraph, Luther mentions his companion on the journey, a man by the name of Wenzel Link. Now, Wenzel Link was a fellow Augustinian monk and companion and follower of Luther, and on this particular occasion, he also served as Luther's fashion consultant. You see, it turns out that Luther was wearing an old cowl. No, not a cowl. No, not an owl, a cowl. You know, the hood that a monk wears over his robes. Well, it seems like Luther's cowl had holes in it, and Link basically looked at him and said, Martin, you can't go in front of the cardinal looking like that. And so they exchanged cowls, because Link had one that was newer. So, as a consequence of this, Luther was able to go properly dressed before Cajetan. Now, at the bottom of this letter, we actually get a view into Luther's mindset as he was writing this letter. In fact, it's kind of terrifying. He writes that he feels like he is a lamb surrounded by wolves who are rushing towards him to devour him. Now, despite this, he says down here, in quoting from Romans 3, verse 4, he says that God is true, but man is a liar. Now, possibly it was as a consequence of the image that he used, which was so frightening, but Luther got a little distracted. And you can see right here that what he actually wrote first was that God is a liar. He wrote the word mendax. And then he realized it, crossed it out, and then wrote is true, and wrote the word verax. To be perfectly honest, the people in Nuremberg were correct. It was dangerous for Luther to go to Augsburg and speak before the cardinal. Now, as a consequence of Luther going there, he found that he was grilled by Cajetan for several days. And then, realizing that the situation was getting worse, Luther escaped in the middle of the night by climbing over the gate of the town and disappearing and heading back up to Wittenberg. Now, the cardinal reported back to Pope Leo X that Luther was now a heretic and recommended that he be excommunicated. So Luther had gotten away before this happened. As a consequence of Luther's excommunication, he was summoned to the Diet of Worms.
Ew.
No, not again. No worms jokes, no diet jokes. He was summoned again to the Diet of Worms, and there he had to appear before the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. After being grilled about his beliefs for a while, Luther was asked by the emperor, or told actually, to give up his beliefs. And Luther took a day. He said, I need to think this over. He went back, he read the Bible, he went over his own thoughts, and he came back the next day and said no, he was not going to back down. And then he left Worms. Now, a short way out of the city, Luther was suddenly kidnapped by a group of knights who had been sent by the Elector of Saxony. What they did was to take him away to a safe house, the Wartburg Castle, about 170 miles southwest of Wittenberg. So Luther remained under protective custody for the next 10 months, disguised as a knight, Junker Jörg. And imagine him, he grew this long beard, kind of like mine. So as a consequence of this kind of early modern witness protection program, Luther found himself for the next 10 months in the Wartburg. Now, imagine being in a castle for 10 months. There's no cell phones, no Wi-Fi, you don't get streaming services, there are not even any crossword puzzles. Luther didn't need any of these things because he had a plan to keep himself busy. He used those 10 months to produce his translation of the New Testament from Greek into his contemporary German. He published it in 1522, shortly after coming out of his exile in the Wartburg. What we have here is a copy of the second edition of Luther's New Testament from 1524. It's open to the beginning of Acts, and you can see on the facing page a beautiful illustration of Pentecost. You can see the Holy Spirit descending down upon the disciples and the tongues of fire and everything. It has been beautifully hand-colored. Now, the original would have been a woodcut by Georg Lemberger, but this is what's called Fürstenkolorit, which means prince's coloring. This copy likely was made for a prince in the Holy Roman Empire originally. And as a result, we have this very special one here today. And so, now today you have had a chance to see how the Bible is so consequential.
To learn more about the museum or plan your next visit, go to museumofthebible.org.
Yes! Just like Luther at the Castle Church. Nailed it.